All right, we're live. Kevin, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on?
It's good to be with you. It's welcome to the channel Unfiltered. We got Kevin Clune, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend. I say that about everybody, Kevin. So I
Yeah,
quite
I
right.
figured.
But
Yeah,
there are multiple myths and legends and men, right? So like you get
yeah.
to be in that group, man. But it's good to be with you, dude.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I real quick for those who don't know who you are, your background, why we're talking. Just real quick introduction to who you are.
So I'm Kevin Clune. I founded MSP Growth Hacks. Last year, MSP Growth Hacks was actually acquired by Top Down Ventures. So now I continue to work on MSP Growth Hacks, um, working on MSP to MVP, which is basically like a research and development project under Top Down as well. And, continuing to help build Top Down. And, we're kind of doing a lot of stuff in terms of the research, AI enablement, kind of go to market, things like that. Very customer and MSP centric. So, it's great because I started MSP Growth Hacks after exiting an MSP. Had a marketing company before that. So this kind of seamless transition from, kind of like through the channel from like, building a community off of just all the lessons of an MSP to now like helping other people kind of do the same. And then, but keeping MSPs at the center, like has been really kind of rewarding journey for me. So, you know, that's where I am.
I love that. I said this to John Harden, who we just did an episode with, and it's the guys that at least I've been able to connect with in the channel because everyone knows I came from outside the channel. The guys that I've been able to connect with, they genuinely seem to care about the health of the channel
Mhm.
and the MSP space. Not just like, oh, I kind of landed here, I did this thing, it's what I know. But they're and obviously the MSP channel is known for having that communal aspect, something that I didn't know coming into it, and obviously is very apparent now, but like the genuine level of care and wanting to see the channel succeed outside of just like your success being tied to it. Like obviously like you do well, the channel does well, but outside of that, you're like, no, like I genuinely care about what we do, the people in it, the customers that are supported by it, the businesses that are supported by MSPs. That seems very apparent to me to almost everybody I've talked to.
If you think about it, like the life cycle of an MSP is actually very long. Like if a lot of these MSPs that I know, like they're 10,
Yeah.
20 years in business, right? And so
Yep.
there's to kind of be in the industry, it's a long-term commitment, especially when the benefactor, the MSP, they're like they've grown roots, they're not going anywhere. So the people that die out are like the people that come in and they come in firing and they're like you know what I mean, like they're just trying to you know get a little too aggressive and everything with like being helpful, right? And it's just like no, it's more of a long game, I think, in the channel. And you have to really want the right things and want the right things for the right people, and the right people are the MSPs. Like they're the ones who matter the most.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's super apparent. Like I said, I in I mean your experience, you know more than I do, frankly and obviously. But since being in the channel, you're right. Like every MSP has been around for like forever. Like
Mhm.
I don't think we have a single partner that's been around. I mean, I guess we have like one that's been around for like 3 years now, but that's like the youngest by far. I mean, by far. Everybody else has been doing it since like the 1890s or whatever. They've been around for a hot minute now. So, well, good. Obviously, one of the points of the channel Unfiltered is talk about how technology is changing the channel in itself. As as a SaaS vendor in the channel, obviously we're aiming to change outcomes, but from the outside, I could see, man, the channel is genuinely changing rapidly, and having been someone that has not been in it for very very long, that became even more apparent in talking to people like you and others that no, there is like a lot has changed in a very short amount of time, and they feel very strongly that even more is going to change as we continue to progress, right? And so I know you wanted to talk about some changes in internal tooling and opportunities there. So if you just kind of want to talk about that general subject, and I have plenty of questions to follow up with.
Yeah. So like the thing I'm kind of very interested right now in kind of observing is, I guess you could call it part of like the vibe coding motion that's going on, right? And the way I see it, there's kind of like three waves, like this vibe coding thing. Like it started with, the tools were okay, but really like what they were accomplishing was they were used primarily by developers, maybe some lazy developers, maybe some like junior developers that like wanted to kind of be able to like ship more, ship faster, whatever. But ultimately, like it was still a technical tool for technical people. Like you couldn't really accomplish much that you could actually use, right? That was kind of like the first wave. And then the products kept getting better and better. Eventually, I think what happened was, and this is kind of like the wave that I caught, which was then the next round was like the founders and the marketers. Like all of a sudden, founders, I think, kind of caught on to this, like just out of resourcefulness, right? Like they don't have a lot to work with. They can't pay for developers. Like if you want to actually create a prototype or create a company, you have to go, there's only so many ways to do it. But if you need a product, this is a great way to build one, not a secure way to build one or whatever. Like we'll get into that, but
it's a great MVP.
It's a way, exactly. Yeah, a prototype. Yeah. And then marketers, obviously, like, I built more websites than I can count over the years. Like this is without a doubt, like the easiest way to ship a website in like an hour. Right. So, and even the like just feeding it content and documents and whatever, and just like it, goes nuts. So that's kind of the second wave. And I feel like we are kind of through that wave to where all the marketers and founders, actually there's data that came out at the end of last year, which I think it was actually Andreessen Horowitz said there was like a 60% increase in submissions to the App Store, which again is directly, I think they're attributing to this sort of like movement, right? And the accessibility of vibe coding. So then you have like now what I'm seeing is the founders and marketers are kind of through, and you start to see now, and the products have gotten better and better at the same time. The products meaning like Lovable, Claude Code, like all the things people are using for this. And now you see like these regular business people, executives starting to dip their toe. And I think that's very interesting to me because this is like a first. This is what used to be like a document now can be a prototype or an app. I actually have a lot of experience with, I helped co-found a company that built like internal tools for an enterprise, actually like a single company. We had a contract with one company. It's a brand everyone knows, but I won't say who it is. But like, and we were using a low code platform called Mendix to do this. And what was really interesting is like I saw all of the challenges of that, of like having to, take feature requests from a million different people and like talk to, translate it to developers. Like it's just so slow. And at the time we were doing it ultimately what would be the fastest way, which was like low code, not like full on custom development. So now what you're seeing is an executive or a middle manager at some kind of, like small enterprise can like just build an internal app by themselves with like a closed feedback loop. So you don't have to translate your idea to a developer and have the developer tell you 7 reasons why it won't work, or like this compromise and that compromise. It just happens, and it happens. And then it even tells you like, hey, here's what you should do next. Right. And then It keeps going and keeps going. And I'm just seeing more and more business people take this approach. And it's honestly like, it's making me wonder a lot. What's really funny is it's so hard to predict these trajectories at this point. A perfect example is like 2 months ago, I thought for sure that the sort of SaaS, traditional SaaS per seat license market, like that model was just dead, right? Everything's tokens and consumption and whatever. And then like, even the stock market reflected that, like Salesforce going out, like all these like traditional SaaS companies are bleeding out basically. And then last week, you have this like Claude bot agent craziness happen. And like the first thing everybody did was buy like a Google Workspace license for their Claude bot, which is like hilarious, right? Because it actually, the licenses went up. So now I don't know that that's clearly not like a long-term solution and pricing model for agents. I think that's probably like something else. But it just kind of proves like you just don't know. You have no idea. We could kind of pontificate these ideas and concepts, but who knows how it will actually play out, right?
It's very volatile. The whole movement in space, there's a lot of volatility right now. And I think, I'm non-technical. My co-founder is obviously technical, full stack developer. We've talked a lot about his opinions on this, And like for me, I just last night I produced an internal tool to help us determine ROI for our users, right? To monetize that for them. And I made it in literally a night. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it gets the job done I don't need my co-founder developing that for me. It'd be a waste of his time, but it's a tool that we have seen that we need for our partners, right? And to be able to go in and literally within an hour have that tool, share that with our team, and they go, dude, this is super clean, and have it like, okay, it needs some more polish, and there's some things I could do, there's some more functionality I could probably build, but that's gonna take me like another 30 minutes, an hour tonight.
Right.
And just have it done and ready to push out, which is very exciting. The other part is I find is interesting is, and this was shared with me by my co-founder, is you saw the software developer rates decrease, like how much they were making on hourly. There were a lot of developer layoffs, which kind of coincided with this change that you see happening. And now you're starting to see I think the signals of the opposite, of where more developers are being hired, more rates are kind of starting to climb back up slowly but surely. And I asked my co-founder, like, what do you think that is? And obviously he sees a lot of especially for non-technical people, a lot of opportunity in those apps and the low code or no code vibe coding, tools. But those tools also produce a lot of tech debt.
Yeah.
And they produce a lot of, like you said, it great for internal, but pushing them external, it has a whole nother like security and compliance risk, especially within the channel, right? And it's just there's a lot of like you said, there's a lot of unknowns, and it's very hard to predict the future. Now, I'd be surprised if that problem isn't solved, because that is an obvious problem that the developers of these tools know that there's an issue with that. I would be hesitant to download an app from an app store that was no coded, or use no code tool from somebody that really doesn't know what they're doing, not knowing where my information is, my data, how that's protected, how secure that is. All those are questions. But to go back to your point, for MSP specifically and in the channel, it's like, well, now you have the opportunity to use those tools internally. But I guess the question then follows up. It's like, okay, those are internal tools, but are those internal tools for their processes, or are they touching customer data? You know what I'm saying? Like, you probably wouldn't want it touching customer data, right?
Right. So this is the problem, right? Like, and this is both the problem, and I think the opportunity maybe for the MSPs is like, even I myself, I was just talking to one of our developers this morning. I'm like, I need guardrails. Like, tell me what can I do and not do? What are these limitations? And you also need like consistent patterns. What you end up with is, and even like we'll take like a tool like Lovable, for example. you start, they call them like projects, and like you're working on this project. This is an app, right? And it's like basically, again, it's almost the equivalent of like a document in these platforms. And that's what's very interesting is like I can take, let's say I'm going to work on a project and I create like a scope and all these tasks and whatever, and I create it in a document, and then rather than put that into Asana or whatever, I can just drop it into Lovable, for example, and like I can have it create a custom tool. I don't have to enter anything. It all just it enters it all for me. It builds the features, whatever. What you don't get, clearly, number one is security. Number two is like all those little features that you just never thought of that matter, like the emails, like the notifications, that like all those little things. You have to like actually think of those and implement them. But it's very easy. So like, I'm looking at this from, okay, if I'm able to do this now, what happens when someone with like far less wherewithal in another industry that can just kind of hop on and do this? And I think it's funny because like Shadow IT used to be like someone else's app, like, oh, I've got this like browser plugin, or I've got this sketchy like email client app on a phone or whatever. Now it's like they're creating the monster themselves, and so again, this is why I think it's like the threat and the opportunity might be the same thing. Like in terms of the MSP, the opportunity, number one, I think it's like the guardrails. Can you actually go in and provide guardrails and tell them how to actually implement use the technology, but use it in the safest way? And then obviously there's like the compliance and governance part of it, to like making sure that everyone is using it that way. And then, on top of that, it's like consultation. It's like workflows. And because if you just start firing out these projects, you end up with a bunch of like mini apps that are like siloed. They have all these like tiny little databases, if any at all, right? Like, so you just have this like confetti of data everywhere, and there's no source of truth, or there's like duplicate sources of truth. So it's like a terrible infrastructure. But again, if you start to look at it in the equivalent of like just documents and document infrastructure, this is something like MSPs have like conquered, like helping their customers understand, here we have SharePoint or whatever, and like here's how you set it up, here's how you can organize it, and we manage the licenses. And right, if you start to think about it in the same context of documents, but now they're just sort of these like apps, it becomes a little more clear, because nobody really gets worried necessarily about, sure, there's issues with permissions on documents and whatever, but duplication of data and stuff like that. If something is one document over here and another document over there, who cares, right? Nobody's sort of worried about that. So I think we need to just figure out like what happens here. What are the standards? How do we actually like do this successfully? It's going to happen. People are going to do it. So how do you swoop in and like be the voice of reason and the adult in the room that like guides everybody towards the proper solution? I wish I knew what that was. I think we're too early in the game, right?
Come on, man. Just to come in here and make predictions, just to be the soothsayer.
I'm just going to take the credit when it happens. And then
yeah, exactly. Hey, remember, channel Unfiltered, go listen to that episode. Yeah. I have two questions. Obviously, you can answer them however you want, but I want to ask them before I forget what they are. Number one is, do you think that there is an opportunity for MSPs in their clients building their own tools and helping with that infrastructure or secure, like, the MSSP motion, I guess, whatever you want to call it, right? Like helping them as a consultative approach of, hey, just so you know, you built this great tool that's, you're touching, your clients are touching, but here are the risks around that. Maybe there's some kind of motion of MSPs having an opportunity with those tools being built outside the MSP. And the second question would be, just so I don't forget, is are you seeing any real world examples that you feel comfortable talking about within an MSP and how they're using this technology and getting value out of it? So those are the two.
So yeah, so I'll tackle the first one first, which is I do think if you look at like just software in general, the fact that like user interfaces used to be like the biggest issue, right? So you could find a developer, but historically, like developers and UI like are not the same thing. I mean, Jamie, you know this, right? So like someone who can create functionality don't always like the button's always in the wrong place or the text is wrong, and it's just
there's a reason that like you work with a UI designer outside of your developer. Yeah, 100%.
But what these tools now, like what they're producing in terms of UI, it's like perfect almost immediately. And it just knows design patterns really well. And it just takes you like the UI just becomes like disposable, right? Like it's so easy to now accomplish. And it used to be like the hardest part. And so that I think is a huge unlock for like any non-technical, non-designer to be able to actually like produce something. I think what MSPs are already focused on is like the layer beneath that, which is the automation and the workflow, like building these sort of agentic workflows. And there's every MSP is kind of like talking about this, whether it's like N8N or whatever they're using. But at some point, maybe the company is going to want to interact with that in a traditional, like with some sort of UI. And it might be in a tool they already own, meaning like, I used the example of Asana before. Maybe there's Asana is the UI in that workflow and they do this and they do that. But I think more likely what's going to happen is you can start shedding these costs in one place or another. And the amount of like actual UI that we need just gets reduced because you can start to consolidate. People now like, and this is already happening, this is not new, but like the apps, like for example, Apollo. I use Apollo and it's one of my most valuable resources, like tools that I use, but I log into it like once a month. And it's because I use the API, right? APIs like obviously are being leveraged more and more. And when I pay the bill for Apollo, I don't think, oh, I didn't log into it, therefore I didn't get any value from it. I just think of like all the credits I used from enriching and right. So, but there you still need a UI at some point along the journey. And I think a lot of those are going to end up being custom if they exist. It's not necessarily going to be people just like using something off the shelf unless it's like a large company, right? So that's where I think the MSPs delivering to the customer, if they're like building an app for a customer, it's going to be just a cog in that machine of like the workflow in itself and how you can actually then deliver something that the customer can use that acts as like part of this larger system.
What if real fast follow-up question before the example part of that the two questions I had for you. What if the customer's already developed it on their end? You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I guess they would have to tell the MSP that hey, I had this tool, it's been developed, right? Like, but they've already done it. They've used, Lovable as an example. They're probably one of the biggest ones in the world, right? So they use Lovable to develop this app. And, the MSP knows they have it. They know the purposes behind the app. The UI is fine because Lovable has already done it for them. what's the opportunity there? Is there any opportunity of maybe plugging in and helping them make that more robust or secure, any of those sort of things?
Exactly. I think it's governance. I think it's the same.
Okay.
It's the same opportunity that applies to like them using ChatGPT and uploading their whole customer base, which is like ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same problem, I think, and just a different use case.
That opportunity already exists. Like that's already been obviously addressed in the governance thing. It's just it's a new mode. It's a new avenue that you would be able to plug into.
And I think like it's hard because that, again, I actually to already hit on like your next question is, I don't know that I have a good example of somebody that successfully like implemented and rinsed and repeated a go-to-market service offering as an MSP to like actually deliver this. I think this is more like hypothetical. There's a lot of really great like AI as a service platforms, right, that MSPs can sell through. So I would check those out, because one of the benefits of using a platform like that is they kind of come pre-installed with the guardrails that we're talking about. One of the disadvantages are just being the limitation. So that I think is number one. Like, you can't just expect a customer to like know, as an MSP, you can't expect your customer to know their limitations, especially when they're being given this like superpower that they could never do before. Like, again, for me personally, I had like a 15-year career of like having to deal with developers telling me no, you know what I mean? And that's always been frustrating for me. It was like, because like I'm always just like, oh, I should do this and do that. It'd be really cool if I do that. And like now
I know that pain intimately.
Yeah. So just imagine this like superpower that just gets handed to these people, and now they can have everything they want and more, right? And so
it's like letting your kids into the cookie jar, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You used to be able to gatekeep how many cookies you get.
Yeah, you can't.
They get on top of the fridge, they get the jar, it's over,
Yeah. The mistake is like assuming that people can control themselves and do it in like a
I don't think I've ever assumed that.
Safe and orderly way. Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I think I've talked about this before, but like there's this other idea of like who captures the gains of AI, which is the employees. I saw this like research report on where there was this like huge cohort of people who like used AI, but like don't admit it to their employer, right? And so the concept here is that yes, like they're actually using it, but they don't want to be forced to use it, because if they're forced to use it by their company, then the employer is technically the one capturing those gains, because they're assuming that, hey, I'm enabling you to do more work in less time, so like that's what you're going to do. If they use it sort of themselves in the capacity of like a shadow IT sort of situation, then the productivity is owned by them. Like they're kind of capturing those gains, right? And they don't want to just tell their employer that. So this is like, I think the tug of war that is happening when it comes to like, an individual user at a company versus an organizational level. And then obviously the MSP who kind of like acts as a partner, is like and there are really great tools that can help kind of assess what's being used, what's not being used, right? So there's a huge opportunity in this for the MSP. There's what I don't want. I think like this is very like optimistic, but I think the not so optimistic part is you have a bunch of people who now are like, it's no longer inspiring because like they're just forced to do 10 times the amount of work. Right. And under these like crazy conditions, I actually saw something last night, which was crazy to me, talking about like now with these agents, like you can take basically an employee that no longer works at the company, but like you have all their documents, they have like all their email, all their work history, and you can just like replicate them in perpetuity. Right. So like you you just like replicate their work. Yeah. Yeah. So like that's a not so optimistic way to look at it. But again, if it's, that's like what capitalism and companies are all about, right? Like you actually, you need to inch out those gains. Unfortunately, like, and that's what people are looking for is like, how do you actually leverage it? Because honestly, like it's not sustainable if everybody's just doing 25% of the work they used to do. And it's just not, people are going to compete, right?
Yeah. Well, that goes into a whole different subject. I just made a post on LinkedIn about how I'm a firm believer, and it may seem contradictory from the outside as an AI native company, that AI is there to remove the mundane, tedious parts of the job that frankly lead to burnout, the mind numbing stuff, to then amplify the things that people actually hopefully get into their careers to do, is the things that they enjoy. You know what I'm saying? Just as an example, like as my background in SaaS sales, right? Like if I could have AI do all my prospecting for me, which was like the gritty part of the job, the part of the job that I loved was building the relationships, getting to a partnership agreement, right? The account management after the deal is done, like all of like the mechanical, the admin stuff in between was just a part of the jobs I had to do the things that I actually enjoyed doing, right? And I've talked about that, like I said, publicly, and I'll continue to do so because even as an AI native founder, I hate the idea of replacing people. I get some roles will be replaced. Probably a lot of roles will be replaced. But does that give you an opportunity to open a door to get people into new roles and to new situations that get the best out of them and therefore get the best for your company, right? Probably a different subject for a different day. But I think I agree. There's a lot of opportunity in and outside the channel, which will affect the channel at large, even outside, considering just how much business MSPs actually service support. Like, I come from a background of small business owners, local entrepreneurs, and then you realize, man, like the guys supporting those guys, the backbone of America, are these MSPs that are protecting their data, making sure that they, in the world that we live in 2026, if your systems go down, well, your business goes down today. Like there's very few businesses that can operate off of pen and paper like we used to be able to do, right? And MSPs are the backbone to the backbone, I guess, is the way to put that. But I just think there's so much opportunity. I agree with you. I mean, pretty much across the board. Where my head goes to is all the unknowns that you've already touched on that. Like we can predict any which way from Sunday this thing is going to go and the opportunity that's going to get there. Like you talked about, can't really think of any specific examples now, but there are some MSP right now developing something internally or some MSP client developing something internally that is going to maybe not drastically change their business overnight, but it's going to impact their business one way or another, either good or bad. That's the other part we haven't talked about. Like you said, you're an optimist. I use the term radical optimism a lot. Doesn't mean it's always the best way to operate. You've also got to be a realist in this world, I believe. But with that being said, up to this point, we've talked about the things that are the opportunities, the good things happening. This also opens a lot of doors that we've seen through AI, frankly, could be not so great outcomes for businesses, right? The things that you think, you develop this in with the idea of progression or obviously no one develops anything or does anything to harm their own business, but you just don't know those outcomes. We make decisions every day that harm a business. We don't know about it, right? Until it becomes apparent, right? And those are things I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but I just think I guess what I'm trying to say in all of that is you have to take those things into account. The outcome that you're after, and also the potential and the unknowns that could produce, either good or bad. And sometimes things are. They're neither good nor bad. They just exist. You do you do with them what you will. I just think, especially in this age, we have to think about the repercussions of what we're doing. It kind of brings me back to that Jurassic Park quote of we were too busy seeing if we could and never stopped to think if we should, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I kind of rambled there for a minute, but you're just making me think about a lot of things.
No, I think like it's funny because this is probably one of the first times that MSPs have ever had to slow their customers down. It's usually always the opposite, where the MSP, they've got their cadence of like, they're trying to push for modernization and transformation, but the problem is like this is uncontrolled speed, like right, like it's not, and it's partly just because it's very easy to just kind of get sucked into this direction of like relying on these tools and workflows or whatever, and then just constantly getting like I was saying before, it's like one of the, I think, like biggest differences of like people using, for example, like a Lovable to create like an app is it's not like being able to accomplish it. It's like knowing when to stop. Because like if you set out, it will constantly tell you the next thing to build, and it's like not always right. Like it doesn't fully know your use case. Like it doesn't. So really good practice that, like, again, is like have an idea, have a plan, and then just like have it execute it for you, rather than, so like when you've reached the end and it's like, okay, this is what I wanted, this is what I built. But it will constantly push you or pull you, I should say, right? And so yeah, so that is, again, the more pessimistic look, but like is that which honestly, like depending on who you're looking at it, for the MSP, this might be optimism because it is an opportunity for them. It's an opportunity for them to, again, they're not trying to speed their customer up in this case. They're trying to actually slow them down and regulate them for their own self-interest. So
do you think this plays at all into, and I know that the term doesn't matter, but when I use a term, you'll know what I mean, the managed intelligence provider thing, right? That's circulating. I mean, call it MIP and MSP, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, we all understand it is what it is. Do you think that plays into that though? Like what's being talked about in the channel from that perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are like really organizing around that idea and trying to create like a playbook essentially and the infrastructure for it to be able to go out and execute that. I think that's great. Like that's like just a different flavor of the MSP. I think you and I have actually talked about this before, but like I think this is one of the first times where MSPs have like competition from a completely different like direction, meaning when the transition was cloud, they were the obvious person to help. When the transition was security, again, it was quite obviously them. In terms of proximity to their customer and the relationship, why would it be someone else that kind of ushers them through that? This should be their opportunity, but like everybody has a nephew now who can use these same tools. Do they have a computer science degree and like have 20 years of networking and infrastructure experience? Like, no. But like, can they get pretty dangerous with the tools that they do have? Like, yeah, so I think that's the biggest threat to this is actually like people just coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, specifically like younger people that can build workflows, do like a lot of the things that an MSP would do in sort of like an MIP type relationship. I kind of relate that to back like in my early days, like when I started a marketing agency, it was kind of solely around digital and specifically like Google ads. It was called, I think it was actually called like Ad Desk at the time. It was like very early days. And so what was interesting is, like we were kind of contending against all of the traditional marketing agencies that were selling like magazine ads and this and that, and like they had their packages, and a lot of them like didn't want to manage this. Like this made no sense to them. Like what? Like I'm going to buy clicks from Google and like what are we doing? Right. So the vacuum that was created was like a bunch of young creative people just totally like filled that space and started selling like Google AdWords management, and the same with Bing, and then eventually the same with Facebook and whatever. And it kind of just turned, now everybody's a digital agency, but like at the time there was very like that wasn't the case at all. And it was the people who kind of won that whole thing, I think personally, were like the young people who just jumped in and figured it out. And they all had these like micro agencies. They're basically like freelancers, right? So the same thing could happen with AI. I don't know if it's going to, but I think it's up to the MSPs to take the reins.
How do they do that? Like, how do you, I mean,
I guess it starts
how do you
with like,
communicate that?
yeah, I guess you need to know the customer. You need to kind of know where they're at in the journey, right? You need to kind of not just talking to the owners, but like getting a feel for the organization itself, like what the adoption's
Yeah.
like, you know, like
Yeah.
you can't just expect you can't have a meeting with the owner over Zoom and just expect like everything they tell you is what's actually happening, right? But I all the MSPs that I've talked to, like their customers want to control this. Like they're asking for it, right? Again, this is different than security. It's different than cloud. Like I don't know that everybody was begging for that.
Yeah.
It was more of the other way around, you know?
Yeah. They're trying to convince them, hey, this cloud thing is a big deal. Like you need to get it on the train. Yeah. It's when you say that, it kind of goes in. Like I said, I made that post on LinkedIn recently, just yesterday, talking about how, I've been thinking a lot about, like the human element. Like we say internally, one of our mantras is like human first AI here, like at HelpGhost specifically, right? And what that, there's a lot of things that means, but I talked to Alex Farling, who was the first episode of the channel Unfiltered, and he had a lot to say on this. And I listened to a recent talk that Gary V gave at like an intercom conference. So like customer experience, right? Like, and it was like an hour long, listen to the whole thing. And it really, just something really clicked. A lot of stuff became super clear. A lot of things that I was feeling, but didn't know how to articulate. You know what I'm saying? Like someone smarter and better than you, like someone like Gary V said, you're like, yeah, that's what I've been thinking. I just didn't know how to say it, and he said it. And in what you talked about of like getting to know your customer, getting to know their needs, like actually having that relationship with them, AI is never going to be able to replicate that. I don't care what anybody says. The judgment, the empathy, the humanity behind that kind of, that relationship and doing those things, AI cannot replicate it, and neither should it, in my opinion, right? But what it can do is take those pieces away that hinder you from being able to do those things that you should be doing, right? The opportunity that you've talked about, this new opportunity that's opening up. How do you take advantage of that opportunity without handing off the things that hinder you from doing that? That once again, amplify your capacity to do the things that AI is never or shouldn't replicate. And I say that as an AI native founder, right? And just a perfect use case of, like I said that in a very high level way when I made that post, because quite frankly, I don't know what capacity means for you. Capacity means something different for you than it does for me, than it does for an MSP to an MSP, right? Just like proactive, like what does really proactive mean, right? Like an MSP can use that term or that time savings in the way that they see best fit for their business. But what you just talked about seems like a perfect example of, yeah, like that's what capacity is being created for, is those things to take advantage of opportunities like this. Once again, these are all predictions. Neither one of us are financial advisors, so that's telling you what to do, but nonetheless, like I think that's a really good place to land on, because for me, it's a perfect real world example of what I just put out there. So are there any final thoughts, man, that you think need to get out there? Any things that we haven't talked about that you think an MSP should hear?
I think like taking the very customer centric approach, I think is the right way. Frankly, like with MSP to MVP and that project and the research we're doing, the first sort of research vertical that we have been exploring is customer success. And like I'm getting schooled weekly by, a lot of these guys like Luis Giraldo, Chris Day, Joe Markert, like who have done this over and over for years. And I'm like helping to put together a lot of these like systems and mental models and all of that, all of which we have. And the cool thing is like we're building the models and the frameworks, but then we're building these like micro apps to actually implement them. And so kind of using a lot of these tools that we're talking about. So it's really interesting stuff. And like, I think, yeah, like customer centric, no matter what you do and no matter what the threat or the opportunity, doesn't matter. As long as you're like taking it with the customer, right? And like taking that approach and you're kind of angling up the same side, I think you'll eventually win. Because like, again, you have to own the relationship. That's what MSPs do well or have done well, is they've owned that relationship. They've kind of like weathered these, waves of innovation, and they've helped sort of steer their customer in the right way. I think where it gets wrong and it spirals out of control is like if you are a little too ambitious and too, exploratory with some of these without actually, like if you were last week rolling out like Claude to your customers, like you need to slow down. So there's definitely like a huge pitfall here. So
yeah,
I think that's my biggest takeaway is a great place to start would be like in some of our research, which is all like free to access and just cool stuff we've been working on. But yeah, other than that,
where can they find that? Where can they go to find that?
MSP2MVP.com.
Okay. Awesome, man. Where everybody can find you on LinkedIn. Is that your main spot?
Yeah.
Okay. Go follow Kevin. Kevin's been a great resource for me, man. And MSP Growth Hacks as well.
MSP Growth Hacks as well, yeah.
Yeah, can go there. But I just want to say thank you to, man. You've made time for me in the past, and obviously making time for this. And you've been a great resource for me personally. Great episode, and I hope everybody enjoyed and got some value. We'll catch y'all on the next one.